Hello and welcome to Chapter 6. Today we're going to talk about actually implementing HRD programs. In the previous two chapters we talked about needs assessment and designing the program. So the effective delivery of HRD programs requires a lot of time, a lot of preparation, as well as it involves some creativity and flexibility on the part of the person that is implementing the training. So the proper delivery and implementation assumes that we have gone through and identified the important needs and that we've gone through and written objectives for the program. And now we're at the point where we're actually going to conduct the training. So training, as we talked about, is intended to increase the expertise of a trainee in a particular area. So it's very useful to consider the person's level of expertise before the training starts, and then also during the training process. So a novice learner, as shown by this learning pyramid, may easily get confused or anxious. So novice trainees generally require more guided instruction or more instruction-centered training methods. As they learn more and become more competent and their level of expertise rises, they become more confident and more creative in what they're doing. So at this point, training methods can shift toward more exploratory or experiential type methods. And here where the middle arrow is, this is the point where the trainees are now ready to shift to more exploratory learning approaches. So an effective HRD program has to first identify where trainees are in terms of this pyramid, and then provide assistance for the trainees to move up toward an expert level of performance. And we do this by using a combined approach, and we'll talk about how we can combine lecture, discussion, case studies, behavior modeling, role-playing, games, simulations, and other things in order to move the learner from novice to expert. So there are three basic types of training we're going to discuss: on-the-job training, classroom approaches, and self-paced or individualized approaches. So on-the-job training is where we conduct training at a person's regular workstation or where they actually do their job. And most employees receive some training in this manner. And much of this is conducted informally. And if you've ever worked anywhere, you've probably experienced this, where someone was told to show you the job or tell you what goes on. Okay, so it's not really sometimes a formal structure or a lot of planning goes into it. Well, some programs it does, but probably the kind you've witnessed is pretty informal. So job instruction training goes through a four-step process when we talk about a more formalized approach to on-the-job training. First, we have to prepare the worker. We have to make sure that they feel comfortable and they're motivated. We want to find out what they know. We want to set up the task. So preparing the workers is important because they need to know what to expect. What to expect in this process of training. The second step, we present the task. We tell them what they're going to do, show them, explain it, demonstrate it. So we want to present the task in such a way that the trainee understands it and they can replicate the task as demonstrated. Step 3, we allow them to practice. They perform the task. We can have them explain the steps. We can give feedback on their performance. And we're trying to reinforce correct behavior. Then we have follow-up. We have the trainee perform on their own. We can encourage them to ask questions and check their periodically check their performance. So we use the follow-up as a way of ensuring that the trainee is actually making progress toward the training objectives. Okay, the next category of training is done in a classroom and outside of the normal work setting. So there's some advantages over on-the-job training. We can use a variety of training techniques in a classroom. We can minimize distractions. If you're training someone at their work site, there are going to be a lot of distractions. So we can bring them into a classroom and create a more conducive learning climate. We can also train large amounts of people at once. But some disadvantages, it could be increased cost because we're removing people from their jobs. And it's also dissimilar to the job setting. So we may not have as effective a transfer of training as we would with on-the-job training methods, since that's performed right in their workspace. So the first approach is lecturing. You're all familiar with this since you've been to many, many lectures so far in your college career. And most classroom training is based on some amounts of lecturing. Okay, so this is an efficient way of transmitting, if you have factual information, to transmit that to a large number of people. Okay, but it's one-way communication, and there isn't sharing between learners, because a great way for people to learn is to share their experiences and have more communication other than someone just telling them things. Then there's the discussion approach. This would involve two-way communication with trainees, and then trainees also in communication with each other. So we can ask direct questions, we can ask reflective questions, open-ended questions. But this method requires a skilled facilitator. It isn't easy to lead a good discussion. It takes time. The next category is audiovisual. Okay, in this training method, we use a variety of media to demonstrate the training material. It could be static media, things like printed materials, PowerPoint slides, things like that are static, they're not moving. We could use dynamic media. These are techniques that present dynamic sequences of events, like video. We could use teleconferencing, where we would be at a remote site and doing training over, an audio-visual type situation. So effective dynamic media takes advantage of the capabilities of the medium, okay, rather than simply reproducing printed or static presentation. Okay, and that's one thing we can use in teleconferencing. Then we have experiential methods, okay, and this is where we learn in an active experience, okay, and think of yourself if you've ever gone, or you will maybe in your college career, do an internship. That's an experiential learning experience because you're right there learning it as you're doing it. So different types, obviously internships is one type, but if we're training people in an organization situation, we could use case studies, okay, where people use a decision-making, problem-solving process to solve cases or situations. We could use business games and simulations, which are intended to define or refine problem-solving and decision-making skills. These focus mainly on business management type decisions. We could use role-playing, okay, where trainees are presented with a situation and assigned a role or character in the situation and then asked to play out that role with other trainees. We could use behavior modeling, where a trainee observes someone performing a behavior correctly and then follows that behavior. They discuss the key components and then do role-playing, and then receive feedback and reinforcement about how they're doing. Then the most interesting method is outdoor education, kind of where you see outdoor games like rafting and rope courses that And these focus a lot on group problem solving skills and team building. Okay, then we have computer-based training. This is training conducted in a classroom, or an individual can do that on their own. So there's a lot of possibilities involved in this type of training. Some types of computer-based training: we have computer-aided instruction. Okay, and computer-aided instruction ranges from electronic workbooks to drilling and practicing to CD-ROMs. We could teach basic skills like math and reading. We could teach technical skills. So lots of programs we work with provide interactive tutorials. If you've ever done a tutorial for Microsoft Office, for instance, that would be a computer-aided instruction. Lots of advantages to this method. Trainees are able to control the speed at which they're learning, makes them self-sufficient. We have it's more accessible to learners. We can have it be automated. We can track it. So lots of advantages. Then we have internet or intranet training. And intranet training is training done using a company's network or a company's website. Okay, then we have intelligent computer aided instruction. This is where we can use various methods of technology to learn how someone learns and how much they know, and then provide instruction. If you've ever taken a course with a book from McGraw-Hill, for instance, they have a program called Learn Smart, where it figures out how much you know about the subject material by giving you a pre-test, and then it sets up a lesson and a post-test based on what you know. So it's learning how much you know and then designing a program to teach you what you need to know. Okay, some issues to consider. Okay, we definitely need to consider our objectives. You know, what objectives are we trying to achieve, and which one of these methods will most likely help us achieve those objectives? We also have to consider resources. Some of these methods are fairly expensive. You know, setting up a computer-aided instruction program can be very costly. Okay, so we have to consider what resources do we have. We have to consider who our trainees are and what their expertise is in the various areas. So all these things would have to come into play when we go to implement our program. And that's basically it for Chapter 6. I hope you're finding it interesting and seeing how all this now comes together after we determine the need and the objective, and now we're actually implementing the program. So next time we'll talk about how we evaluate what we've done. Has all this been effective, or do we need to kind of go back and tweak it or do some things differently? Thank you.